Welcome to The Back Pass, a podcast for sports nerds by sports nerds. On tonight's episode, we look back at the FIFA 2022 World Cup in Qatar. We recap the predictions we boldly made, where teams would finish, tactics, and even how many goals we think there might be in the sands of Qatar. We also look at what has been some standout moments from the World Cup. And of course, we have to talk about, has the GOAT been officially crowned? Hello and welcome to The Back Pass. I'm your host Ali Mulwala, and with me today I have Gurpreet, Kevin, and joined by the extended football panel, we have Mike and Ashish as well with us. Hello, gents.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hey, it's gone.
I am going to jump straight into this. We've obviously just watched the World Cup final. Kevin, do you want to give us a recap of the final and the finale and the entire thing that played out over, what was it, like 150 minutes, 180 minutes? Because that's how long we had injury time for.
Certainly. To make it as quick and easy for those who didn't watch the game, go watch the game because it was a fantastic final. Beyond that, Argentina were on top for, I'd say, about 60 to 80 minutes. There were periods where, France broke through, made some good runs, but it was really only after the 80th minute that they started playing. Then it was all France, right up until we got into extra time, and at least the second half of extra time, where Argentina put that goal through, and then I think France got a little bit lucky. I mean, punters out there have told me in person that they wouldn't have called that a handball, but with the way that the reffing has gone, it's not unsurprising that was called as a handball.
If Argentina's first penalty is a penalty, then that's a handball.
Agree.
Yes.
Absolutely
yes,
agree.
Agreed. Yes. And I commend the Polish referee. He's done quite well for his country. I'd say probably better than his fellow countrymen.
Cool. Thank you for wrapping that up, Kevin. And of course, we had Argentina come out eventually on penalties, even though it looked like Argentina might squander another 2-goal advantage in the penalty shootout as well.
It's been a theme with Argentina, hasn't it?
Well, they did it against the Netherlands. They did it against Saudi.
Yep, and it almost happened against Aussie as well. We discussed this at length in the last episode we did. So yeah, I think the theme with Argentina tends to be, if they concede one after the 70th minute, they're probably going to concede two.
It's just some of those matches. So I'll throw this out. I'll throw this out to Gurpreet, Mike, and Ashish. Did the best team win the World Cup?
Yeah, look, I'll take a stab at that. I mean, every time, like Brazil, if you're showboating and if you're, so far up the opposition's nose that they can really smell you and have nightmares about you. I get the whole gamesmanship and all of that, but then again, how Argentina behaved against Netherlands, it was way over the top. So taking that into consideration, I personally don't think there's any place for that sort of behavior in football or any sport at all. So I don't think the best team won. I am dressed all in black. I'm actually in mourning since this morning.
Well, in terms of teams that showed opposition a lot of respect, I think England only got one yellow card all tournament, so they showed the opposition a lot of respect. Very kind and courteous of them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if you look at Argentina, they probably had the most hunger to win it, and that meant getting scrappy results. And sometimes you have to play scrappy in these tournaments to get over the line. So Messi knew it was now or never for him, really, and so did the rest of his team. And they almost, with you have to give some credit as well to the fan base that was there, because it was quite incredible the amount of Argentinian fans that made their way
Mm.
over to Doha to support them, and that obviously helped them as well to some extent. So whether or not they played the best football is arguable. I think on balance, I think France had a better tournament in general.
Yep.
I would just say with France, I'm never a fan of when, for example, in their third full match, they were already through and they decided to make wholesale changes and then lost to Tunisia. I just think that breaks momentum, and it's an opportunity in that game to really work on some things, not just to um, give players a run out and some game time for the sake of it.
Yeah. I mean, we spoke about this in the group stage where there's an obvious plan to rest players because of the heat, because of the lack of training, mid-season as well in a lot of the European leagues. That felt like it played out, and I think the teams that had the most depth we saw make it to the top eight, and then it came down to, I think there was a bit of luck and momentum in who they were playing. If we're just thinking about it, if some way Morocco was able to get past France, and Argentina was playing Morocco, I'm not sure if the same outcome would have occurred. Because, throughout the tournament, France had I'd say, from an attacking standpoint, an advantage, but defending wise, there's always a bit of a concern there. Especially because, you're basically one player down with Mbappe not really wanting to run back in defense. And with the way that the tournament played out and the way that the final played out, that was certainly a factor with Argentina going up 2-0 pretty early on.
Yeah, Mike, just picking up on what you said about Argentina being scrappy, I think you're on the mark there, because coming to your question, Ollie, I don't think Argentina were necessarily the best team, but I think they were probably the most adaptable team.
Yep.
If we go to the very start of the tournament and we look at the loss to Saudi Arabia, which we discussed at length, it was Scaloni basically playing a 4-4-2. He then moved from playing a 4-4-2 with two up top, made a ton of personnel changes for the Mexico game, even though he kept the same shape. There was a ton of personnel changes. He used a 4-3-3 for the next game. For the next two games in the knockouts, he basically moved to playing 3 at the back with wing backs, went back to the 4-3-3 for the semi-final, brought out the 4-4-2 for the final. Basically, it's the type of tactical flexibility that England never had, right? And I think to win a World Cup, you don't necessarily need to be the best team. You need a bit of luck, like Kevin had said. You've got to scrap, and you've also got to be flexible. And I think Argentina probably had all three.
So you think it came down to Argentina actually having a varied and adaptable squad? Because we've spoken about it, and I think it's the common criticism for England as well, even though they have a multitude of different players. They pick pretty much, we're going to play this way, and our spare players are going to fit in the same holes left by the players that started, rather than really bring something different to the team so that we can change starting lineups or whatever.
Yeah, I guess just a little segue into the predictions we all got so sensationally wrong, but we spoke about how stacked Belgium's lineup was, right? And I think it was Mike. The last time we did a show on the World Cup, it was Mike who was saying he would drop Eden Hazard for Trossard. It's the type of decision that Belgium never made. But we look at what Scaloni did this morning with the Di Maria call, right? It was Di Maria came in for Paredes, and Paredes has been one of their better players. Again, just the ability to make decisions and get them right and react. I think Argentina and France, to be fair, were probably two of the most adaptable sides.
Yep. And while we're also going through predictions, do we want to discuss some of the other bold predictions? I think straight off the bat, we have to commend Kevin, because in the very first, before the World Cup started, conversation, he was definitely Team Argentina, and he thought Argentina had the goods to get there. You changed your mind though, Kevin.
I mean, who wouldn't? I'm pretty terrible when it comes to picking a World Cup winner. So I got it right at the start, and then kind of like my history with any sort of gambling. This is why I don't gamble. I change my mind halfway through and get it completely wrong. So if you remember, if we just go back a couple of weeks, England and Netherlands were playing in the final in my eyes. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty. I mean, they got close, but nowhere near as close. They probably, you know.
I think you can blame me for that, Kevin. I think I did the old Messi versus Guavidol on you, and I sold you a dummy twice and got you to pick got you to pick Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah. But there has been a lot of surprise packets. Like you would have thought Japan would make it through. South Korea, great for the Asian nations.
Sensational.
Morocco making it to the Final Four. That was amazing. It's been a pretty special tournament. One of the predictions that we mentioned, or one of the things that we spoke about, was the number of goals, and it's I think the highest score, most amount of goals in the tournament.
Total goals.
Yeah. But, comparatively, there was a lot of nil-nils. I think penalties had a play. Maybe it's a little bit artificial. They were calling a lot of penalties in the box, so there's a lot of goals that way. But overall, very entertaining and quite enjoyable to watch.
And Ashish and Mike, your initial predictions compared to how everyone finished up. I know everyone was obviously was trying to push England into that final, and always knew France was a big hurdle.
Yeah, well, I actually had Argentina as well, and I thought it was going to be Messi's tournament, so I had him in there.
That's right.
But for me, I've always had doubts about England and Brazil for different reasons. Both stacked with talent, no doubt, but they've got varied weaknesses. And I think from a England point of view, it pains me to say it, but Harry Kane is almost now becoming the weaker link in the English team, and he's been great over the years, banging in goals, but he's possibly lost half a yard of pace, and he is becoming a bit more predictable. I'm not even going to get into the penalty miss there. And for Brazil, they've got a wealth of talent, but they're all very similar players, and the likes of Richarlison and co are very much of the sort of showboating and flair type players without actually getting stuck in and doing the hard yards. So I'd effectively written both of those two off. So for me, it was really Argentina and possibly the likes of one of France or potentially Spain. But I quite like the look of Argentina. I have to agree though with Kevin. After the tournament started and they lost to Saudi Arabia, I still thought they'd make it out of the group, but I really wondered how they would go on to win it after that. And the reason for it is, how would the dressing room react to such a result? Would they become resilient and kind of work out why that happened and what they could do to fix it and get over it, or would they start pointing fingers and infighting, which has happened with teams in the past, and I'm sure happened with some of the teams at this World Cup, such as Belgium. So
there's another country as well that was in the news a lot, which had a lot of press and a lot of attention.
You mean player? It was basically one player from that country.
Well, I think the FA actually had to come out and release a statement as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I was always very firmly in Camp Brazil because I base my predictions based on how many Arsenal players a team's got. It's nothing tactical, nothing smart
the worst
about
way
it.
to do it. Like, let's face it, Arsenal's trophy record.
Yeah, I'll let that one slide because. But no, I mean that's what I was basing on. They had I mean, a young, stacked, and equally balanced, experience-wise squad coming into the World Cup, and they were doing quite well. But as soon as they lost to Cameroon, the wheels started squealing and squeaking, I should say. And a couple of matches later, they were back on the plane home with Portugal. So that was disappointing. Even more disappointing was the injury to Jesus, being out for 3 or 4 months now. I don't know how that's going to factor in, but I should maybe get a bit more technical and do a bit more research before I pick my horses. You know,
It's okay. Next, come Jan, it's going to be same old Arsenal.
yeah, I mean, I'll take it on the chin, right here, and roll with it. Apart from that, I mean, I did have high hopes for England as well. Again, young, dynamic squad. Uh, well balanced with experience as well. But again, as Gurpreet mentioned, just the technical now seems to be missing. I mean, that was Southgate's third tournament, I think. He's now gone on and he's going to stay for Euro 2024 in Germany. So we'll see how that goes along. But yeah, for me, I thought England promised a lot, but under-delivered. Belgium as well, always undercooked. Unfortunately, so much promise, but the delivery is just not there. Disappointing, but you know that's how these tournaments go.
Yeah, how about Portugal as well for underwhelming? They at times looked so great. They put in like some amazing performances, and they put in some really really tough to watch performances.
Yeah, just with Portugal, it kind of reminds me of a more extreme version of England. I think both those teams are what we call flat track bullies. Um, when they're playing against opposition that they can break down easily, they'll dominate. But they don't have the variability, and exactly as Gurpreet's saying, to be able to flex with the different strategies more elite teams provide. And I think some of that has to do with the player personnel that they have available. So with Portugal, it's a player personnel thing, I think. Whereas with England, I think it's more of a managerial thing where the talent pool is probably there to be able to play that style, but it hasn't been selected.
Yeah, look, Kevin, on this, I think you're so right because, and look, this is without wanting to beat a dead horse. I'm talking about Gareth Southgate. The fact that he kind of had he had an approach that worked pretty well against Wales, albeit that it took a set piece to open them up in the second half. The fact that he kept going back to that same approach against sides that play so differently to Wales, right? Senegal are a very different challenge to whatever Wales offered, and France, of course, we know that they are probably on paper the best side in the world. The fact that he's got the same tricks when the games start is I think atrocious tactically. Portugal, I think, are very similar, where I think the shadow of he who shall not be named lurked heavy, even though he sat on the bench. And I actually thought against Morocco, who, in my opinion, were, if we're talking about surprise packages and being well coached and well drilled in and out of possession, I don't think there is a team that gets close to Morocco when you look at the talent pool. When they went 1-0 up against Portugal, their response was to bring Ronaldo on. And in some ways, it got easier for Morocco to see the game out. I think it's the same old with both those teams where they have a plan A, but when plan A doesn't work, we don't really know what plan B and plan C are. Whereas if you compare that to Morocco, you compare that to France and obviously Argentina, I think at various points in this tournament we've seen them not just have a plan A and a plan B, but a plan C and D as well, which I think speaks to just some great coaching and some great decision making.
Yeah, and I just add to that actually. If you look at Argentina and France today, classic example, they neither of them seemed to fear conceding a goal because they knew they've got the talent to go and score another one at the other end. And I think if you look at the likes of England, particularly in the game against France, the focus was all about trying to keep Mbappe quiet without really, from what I could see, enough focus about how they were going to score goals themselves. So I think you have to be able to, as you say, Capri, have that plan B where you do need to not just play the way that you always do. If a team comes out and goes ahead, you need to be able to know how to go out and score and not just rely on some sort of Hail Mary to get you through.
Yeah, beautifully said, Mike. Because if we look at, and again, I go back to the Di Maria decision where when we looked at the team sheet, I was fully expecting Di Maria to be on the right. The United fans on this forum will remember that the majority of the good football that Di Maria played was on the right. The assist that he got for Messi's goal against Mexico was from the right. It was a massive surprise that it was Di Maria actually playing on the left. Now, I think truly only Scaloni knows what he was thinking. But I think one of the things he kind of bet on was the fact that Mbappe and Hernandez were going to get forward quite a lot. This is the flank that England and Southgate almost exclusively focused on. Saka's responsibility in that quarterfinal was to help Walker out. We didn't see the attacking best that Saka offers until about midway through that first half. But what Argentina did was they said, okay, you can have that flank, you can get forward, but we're going to have Messi in that space. And if you lose the ball and he gets it, he will punish you. It was basically, you've got Mbappe and Hernandez on that flank, we've got Messi, let's see who wins. And, you know, I love that. I love that approach. England would not have done that. England would have said, and probably even Portugal would have said, whatever it takes to negate the threat.
Yep, definitely. It's a lot of fear based and kind of prevent first instead of attacking to defend, really.
Yeah, which is, when I think about Brazil, that's the exact opposite of how they set up. I think Brazil was picked based on fear. They needed to get all of these players that were, top level talent into the team. And we spoke about it before the World Cup. They, in terms of depth of talent, are definitely up there with France. But they just didn't perform. They didn't connect. Hard to get Neymar in. Hard to get Richarlison in. The way that they attacked was a little bit off as well. And this is probably true for Brazil in general. I think there's a little bit of we get to the quarters, we're good. Coach doesn't need to get sacked. If we don't lose too badly, coach doesn't need to get sacked. Kind of like with England a little bit there. I think Southgate's playing a little bit of, get to the quarterfinal, get to the semi-finals, and then, I'll keep my job for the next period of time.
Well, I think with Brazil, they actually really, really could have used Gabriel Jesus because he would straighten up the attack. He would actually give them a focal point in the front. He'd lead the line. The other players can then, kind of gather round and do that. And I think one player that really should have played a lot more minutes for Brazil, because I think he would have given them a real attacking dynamism, is Fred. We should have played more Fred. There are too many guys doing stepovers and not enough guys just, running around, hacking people down and passing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Ashish is the Gabby J expert, but I do agree, Ali, because and again, going back to Scaloni, now I'm not a Scaloni fan. If we look at the decision to bench Lautaro Martinez, who many were saying he was a shout out to be one of the stars of this World Cup, after the first game to actually bench him and to play Julian Alvarez. And I think Alvarez basically has attributes very similar to what Jesus has, where he runs beyond, he gives you a lot of energy, he presses really well, he's always on the defenders, he's sort of biting at their feet. I think Brazil kind of really lack that decision making where Richarlison is okay for one type of opposition, right? But another type of opposition, a Croatia, who are very comfortable on the ball, very good at playing out from the back. Maybe Richarlison isn't the type, he's not the profile of player. Maybe you do need to change things up. And again, I think a bit of it worked last time, so it's going to just work again. But yeah, I think this has been the World Cup for proactive management, and I think the teams that have done well, that the teams that finished in the top four were probably the most proactive teams, Morocco included.
And while you're saying this has been the World Cup for proactive managers, this has also been a World Cup of a lot of VAR penalties. We've had some of those penalties where we're just like, well, how do you give that one? That wouldn't even be a foul on the other side of the pitch. We had a total of 26 penalties awarded in regular time, or 23, sorry. Penalties awarded in regular time, lots of VAR. Only 17 scored though. 73.9% success rate from penalty kicks. That's got to be a low, right? That's quite low conversion.
I think with statistics, when you take a broad spectrum, you can get really sort of strange results. I think just because of the lack of penalties in general in World Cup history, the fact that the percentage would be much higher would make a bit more sense. I also, if I was wearing my shiny tinfoil hat, I think there's a bit of a conspiracy going on. FIFA's had a chat with the refs and said, "We need more goals. Let's give them more penalties in the box." So
How many soft penalties did Argentina get though?
Ooh.
That's a very good question, Ali.
But in all seriousness, what could be better for the game than Messi winning a World Cup? I'm not sure.
He was.
Come on, Kevin. It's not like
Yep.
he's paid by a club owned by Qatar. Oh, is he now?
Oh.
For how many years has he been paid by Qatar?
How many PSG players have there been? Were there in the final?
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a documentary. I'm sure there'll be a doco in about 5 years' time. They'll explain how the Qatar World Cup was stolen by a couple of men.
How Argentina won the World Cup. I think there were more PSG players in the Argentinian team than the French national team.
Wow. Wow.
Just saying. What?
Yeah, that's a good stat. That's a very
great
good
stat,
stat.
Ali.
That's a very slick stat. But yeah, going back to the penalties, you look at the Netherlands keeper. That dude's huge. He was what, just over 2 meters tall, but yet some of the penalties he saved, he was quite agile for a bloke that tall. Getting right down in amongst that and getting his hand to those penalty kicks. He did quite well, and some of the other keepers as well. So I think. I don't know if it's just out of practice. Maybe they had special penalty kick goalkeeping machines in Qatar that they've just developed, along with the ball, a high-tech ball, But it was some of those stops were quite amazing. On the other side, some of those penalty kick takers were horrible as well. So I don't want to keep on dragging on about it, but you look at Kane's second penalty against in that match. It wasn't too good, unfortunately.
Has it landed?
Yeah.
You look at every single penalty Spain took at the World Cup was just all of them were terrible. Like every single one of them.
Yeah, in Japan's penalty shootout was absolutely horrific. I don't think any of them had any power on. So yeah, I wonder if it was a combination of maybe really it was focused from the goalkeeping side of it, the penalties, but in terms of the takers, maybe there was not enough time to work on that.
Yeah. But then also on the flip side, in the World Cup final, Mbappe steps up 3 times from the penalty spot and slots it past Martinez. Twice in regular time, and then he steps up first in the penalty shootout, and he goes again.
He's not even their first choice, is he?
Correct. Yeah, I think he was only taking it because Griezmann was off. I think Griezmann's their designated taker. But I thought, Ali, to your point, Mbappe's technique was a bit more old school, right? It was more going back to like the technique we saw where you pick a side and you just power it. And I think one of the things we've seen with the likes of Jorginho and Bruno Fernandes is that kind of, they're trying to fox the goalkeeper and trying to basically get him to pick a side.
Yeah.
And I think to the point that Ashish has made, where we've got I guess physically these massive goalkeepers, but I think they've really refined that technique of going really late. And I think Emi Martinez, in many ways, is the classic example of someone who's very agile, goes very late, but when he does, he's got a, I mean, he got his hand,
Big leap,
he
big
got a
spring.
big old hand on that Mbappe penalty, the first one, and he comfortably saved the second French penalty from Kingsley Coman. I think that
Yeah.
ended up hitting him on the chest, right? So I think it's a case of where I think we've got a lot of takers now who are trying to fox the goalkeeper, and we've got goalkeepers who are sort of just really good at picking up and going late. And I kind of personally, I was expecting the conversion rates to be a bit lower because I think we've got too many takers who are not as decisive. I mean, you think about, growing up watching someone like Ruud van Nistelrooy, right? There was that very famous penalty he took where the goalkeeper's
Yeah.
pointing and telling him, hey, I dare you to go on that side. And he goes that side. The goalkeeper jumps that side, but he still powers it into the bottom corner. I think that's a technique that's almost dead now. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll see, a resurgence in that old pick a corner and power it. I wish Harry Kane did that.
So there's a little bit of there's a little bit of history there, Gurpreet. So there was a stat that circulated probably about 7 years ago, where Ronaldo and Messi in their prime, that showed that like the penalty scorers or penalty takers with the highest conversion percentages didn't shoot into the corners. They worked more on outfoxing the keeper and then getting the ball safely into the net, and that gave them a higher conversion than aiming for the corner and beating the keeper, but then missing the goal as well. So then everyone kind of obviously now started training for like, well, I got to outfox the keeper, and if everyone's practicing that, the keeper's practicing on
Exactly.
not getting
Exactly.
outfoxed. So then the guys who just step up and just crack it into the corner because that's all they've practiced, they don't have to worry about it. The keeper's too busy thinking about which way is the guy gonna go. He's like, well, I'm just cracking into that one corner.
Yeah.
Catch me if you can.
So why did Hugh Lloris do so poorly then? Considering he's probably one of the best keep. Well, I mean, he was certainly previous to the World Cup one of the best keepers in the world. His performance in this tournament. I don't. I could watch. I'm watching Ashish just like jumping.
This is
Me.
Yeah. All right, go, Ashish, go. This is your segment, brother.
That's because he plays for Spurs.
Ah.
That's why he did so poorly. Okay. That's what I want to say. That's the one line I practiced all night long.
I mean, that's.
Is that also what goes for Harry Kane? Like no one came out good no one came out good out of that.
No.
I mean, he put the pressure on, right? He put the pressure on, but when it came to actually saving the penalties, I think he missed a couple of easy ones there.
And if we also look at some of the shenanigans as well, so if we go back to Emi Martinez, right? That's the third kick where he psyched the French player out altogether, and he missed to the left. That was
Tushemi. Yeah, the third penalty. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Psyched him right out. And rewind a few years back, Emi Martinez, when he used to play for Arsenal, and yeah, good shot stopper and all that, but he didn't have that mongrel in him. He wouldn't put the shits up against other players, the opposition players. But there's something about him that's changed at Villa. He's a different player. He's quite gritty. He likes to push himself about, which is good for him, I guess.
Yeah, he's really come out of his shell. He looks like he's, from the photos at least, a bit of a comedian. Hopefully he's not in prison at the moment, but
He's probably selling off his golden glove for bail money.
yeah, probably. But that save and in extra time, that save was that was the moment. Yeah. I reckon that's where it turned. You could see it on the French. I don't know who took the shot. It was one of the subs. Colomani. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So when he took the shot, I could see on his face that was it. That was the moment that I think that France probably should have taken.
I was just going to say about Martinez, was anyone kind of surprised that he wasn't suspended after his post-match press conference on the referee in the Dutch game? And I don't know if you remember what he said about him, but if you said that in the Premier League about a referee, I think the club would be getting a massive fine. The player themselves would probably face a 3-match suspension. Um,
He's probably going to get a 3-match suspension, but it'll be after the tournament, because FIFA can only meet like 3 times a year or something, so they probably do it at the next next meeting. Everyone else is FIFA's too busy to have meetings about players.
But that's not such a bad team. Like the quality of the competition drops when you have, even though what he said was wrong, the quality, like whether you're, it's not a question of whether he deserves to be punished. It's more of a question of, do we sacrifice the quality of the tournament by taking out a great player who's in form for what he says during the tournament, or do we wait until after it? There's a bit of ethics there, whether it's the right thing to do. You know, he's currently at Villa, right? So, how do Villa feel about not having the keeper for say 3 or 4 matches?
But if you look at that in terms of hypocrisy, though, the threats of suspending England players that were going to wear the
For wearing an armband.
Yeah,
so
100%. Yeah.
they're saying that worse than going off and calling the referees corrupt. So
Which is pretty rich for an Argentinian player to be called referees corrupt.
I felt there was a lot of behavior, particularly through the knockouts. Now, we talked about the amount of just the amount of vitriol after the games on the last show, but I think that's kind of carried the way through. And I almost got the feeling that the officials, the organizers, kind of encourage that because it just adds to the drama and the theater and sort of the clickbaiting. Yeah, I think it is hypocrisy, and yeah, it would never be tolerated. To your point, Mike, I don't think it gets tolerated in the Premiership. I also think probably all of us who watch the Premiership most of the year, our judgment on the soft penalties is probably based on what gets given in the Premiership. I thought some of the refereeing in this tournament had a very kind of Champions League feel to it, where the refereeing was very dramatic. The VAR calls were kind of soft. Yeah, it's basically not saying the Premiership is better, but all I'm saying is it felt different to what we watch week in, week out. And it was probably closer to what we see in the Champions League versus what we see in the Premiership.
Is this the quintessential definition of sports washing, where you bank on these controversial moments to sort of fan the flames and get the tournament and the host, to that matter, right up there and grab the headlines, just get people talking about it a little bit more?
Very well. Yeah, very well said, Ashish. I very much got that feeling that all of the drama and carry on was, as long as it was about the officials and it was about the game and
Players.
Argentina, yeah, and the players having a go at each other. Even if you look at, Ashish, you made the point earlier, the way Messi was going off at Weghorst, it was very un-Messi like. I mean, the translation of what he said to him was pretty shocking, I thought. Yeah, but I almost think it was encouraged.
because it took the attention away from
Exactly.
what's going on in Qatar.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Distraction.
We have kind of held ourselves off until this moment, and the mention of the GOAT. So the GOAT in waiting has been crowned world champion, won the World Cup. That was his big thing that everyone had against him. He was like, well, he's never won the Copa, he's never won the World Cup. Now he's done it back to back in 2 years. He's won both. Is that official? Is he now considered the GOAT? But even if he is in the world, is he considered the GOAT in Argentina? Does he actually replace the legendary Maradona? Is Messi above Maradona now?
Ali, lifelong United fan here. I've argued this, for most of the last 15 years that it's Ronaldo, not Messi. But yeah, I hope the section gets edited out at some point. But yeah, I'm gonna say it. I think the debate is over. Just the fact that he's won that World Cup. He's won. You could always hold it up to Messi and say Pele won a World Cup, Maradona won a World Cup. He never won a World Cup. You can no longer say that. It's always been this kind of personal shootout between him and Ronaldo uh, over the last 15 years. And you can now say that he's won a trophy that Ronaldo's not going to win. I think we can safely say he's not going to play until he's 41. You never know,
never
but
know. You never know.
I
He'll be
would put a
back.
bet on this one to say Ronaldo's not winning a soccer World Cup. And the other thing I think is the manner. And this is probably the biggest thing for me is I know there's been a lot said about him taking penalties, right? I think he's had 5 of them or something in this tournament, but if you look at the Messi magic, right? We jokingly talked about what he did to Guavidol, right? Like he beat him 3 times, right? If we go back 10 years, he probably only needed to beat him once because he doesn't have the pace anymore, but he's got other ways he can adapt. The pass that he played against the Dutch, again, like there were these moments where Messi is literally the only player in world football who could do them all, right? Embarrass a defender 3 times over, play a pass like that. And the third moment for me, again, the loss to Saudi Arabia where where Argentina were down and out and they had Mexico next and it was 0 at half time. And I was sat there thinking, Argentina are probably a goal away from going out of this World Cup. And who stands up? And it wasn't a penalty. It wasn't a goal line scramble. It was basically I think the definition of placement. The way he sort of put that goal in that bottom corner, it almost like picked Argentina off the floor. You cannot say Messi has not contributed to Argentina winning this World Cup. For me, he is the GOAT.
I hate that term. I hate trying to compare.
Oh.
I mean, it's a great conversation, having a couple of beers or, at a nice Korean barbecue. It's a type of conversation that we love to have with mates, but it's such a complicated question because you have to take into account like Pele's era was just brutal. The ball itself could probably, as you said, Ali, prior to this call, the ball could concuss you so easily.
Yep. You score a goal and just pass out.
Yeah, basically, people were playing with broken legs. I hate to use this term soft because it's not quite like it's not the right term, but when we take it in, when we compare the eras, even Maradona's era, the pressure, like the threats of death, you don't have that same sort of things happening in football nowadays, and I think that shows because we get a better quality player, we get a longer lasting player, we get Messi in his late 30s being able to win a World Cup, and that's something special. I think we take that for granted compared to the previous eras, and I'm happy. Okay, hand on my heart, I was a Cristiano Ronaldo fan since I was a little kid, so. When we talk about the two, I think Messi's taking this one, and it's not just the way he's played; it's also the way he's led his team. Ronaldo had the opportunity to do that in this World Cup. He could have came off the bench and just made Portugal a difference maker, but I think he was too set in his ways. The fact that Messi had another gear tactically is a huge part of that as well. As his faculties fall, we may see him play a different style again.
He's adapted. Yeah. And you could very well see Messi drop deeper and play a Xavi Iniesta, like a deeper role, and he can still pull it off. He has the capability to play that midfield pivot and keep going.
He has the want. That's the biggest thing. Like you need to want to play like that.
Yeah. So for me, I'm with Kevin. I'm not really big into definitive kind of statements about who's the best of all time. As he was saying, it's really hard to judge the eras. There haven't been too many people that can say that they've been around comprehensively following both areas to the same level. But yeah, even if we're just talking purely about Ronaldo versus Messi, they've got different attributes that they bring. I mean, for me, Ronaldo's done more in terms of Champions League than Messi has. For example, I think um, Messi, if he didn't have Xavi and Iniesta, how many titles would he won? And then obviously the players that came in after later on at Barca. So I'm not sure there. So for mentality, for example, I would probably give it to Ronaldo in terms of the sort of sheer will he's had. I'd also mark Messi down for the fact he basically retired from Argentina multiple times, akin to throwing his toys out of the cot. He had a tempestuous relationship with the fan base. I think it's fair to say he's possibly for fair reasons had bust up Swiffer like the Vicardi. A lot of things which I would say I wouldn't really put as favourable factors for Messi, but if your whole basis about this is legacy in terms of who people are going to remember in 20 or 30 years, who are kids going to say is their favourite player and encourages them to get into football and follow football, I think you would probably argue that Messi, having done the World Cup now, probably gets that. But purely on a footballing output sense, I mean, to win the Champions League and obviously the Euros, which Ronaldo's done, is no mean feat either. Particularly on the frequency he's done it, let's say. And are we also deducting points off Ronaldo for what's gone on in the last year? So maybe had he retired after
Potentially.
Juventus, would his legacy be more intact?
Is Mike trying to protect a future Chelsea signing here? I asked the question again. I mean, this is.
You know what, Gurpreet, I am waiting for Ashish because I really want Ashish and an Arsenal fan to get in on an ex-Barcelona and an ex-Manchester United player conversation.
Oh yeah. This is my favorite part of the show. Go Ashish. Give us your take on this.
Look, I mean, I'm going to take massive points off Messi for his association with Barcelona, which we now know is
Shock horror.
It's not actually, but
so and also for giving Barcelona another lifeline with the payout they're going to get from FIFA, based on what God knows what. But at the end of it all, when the dust settles, Barcelona are going to get a payout. But all of that aside, if I'm really being honest with myself, I do really think he is the greatest of all time. I mean, if you rewind back to this morning and the first 50 or 60 minutes, you could see the whole Argentina team playing for Messi. They got around him, and they all knew. I'm pretty sure all of us knew that this was the World Cup that was going to settle the debate, right? If Ronaldo was going to win, or if Messi was going to win, whoever won or whoever got the furthest would probably get the gong, right? But you could see the whole of the Argentina team getting behind Messi and just putting on a show for the ages, really. I mean, if you really think about it, the first going up 2-0 and then coming back to get a 3-2 lead as well. They never stopped. So I think if we are to put the title on, it hands down at the moment. Well, is going to Messi. Full stop, really.
yep. And I think that's also part of the difference with how Argentina and Portugal kind of went in the World Cup as well, where it did definitely seem like Argentina really banded around Messi and that whole spirit of like we're gonna get this over the line with him, for him, and he's going to be a savior through it. And where Portugal were kind of like they didn't want to do it again with Ronaldo. They tried and they said it's not quite working. We need you to do a couple of different things. Ronaldo didn't want to, and they said, all right, we're gonna just do it our way. Then we'll just have to come up with a different plan, and that's where it kind of diverged away. In terms of the conversation, it's a very different conversation between Messi and Ronaldo and who's better, because Ronaldo, and I've always said this, Ronaldo is an amazing striker, amazing attacker. He can score all sorts of goals. He can hurt you from in any which way. Where Messi is a very certain type of player, but he is just a, he's just a beautiful footballer to watch. His ability to pass, ability to run into space, find a pass, just seamlessly drift past players. Even in the final today, 35-year-old Messi was walking, and not a single French player
Yep.
wanted to jump in
Yep.
because they knew if they dived in or if they got too close, he would just skip past them. And he can literally walk in a World Cup final, and no one will try to tackle him because they're too afraid of getting beaten. And that's a whole different kind of player, and it's always been the case of Messi's just the phenomenally gifted player who has had a lot of difficulties and a lot of things he had to do to get to the stage. Whereas on the other side, Ronaldo he almost feels like the everyman, where he has just dedicated everything to be who he is. And, the dedication is phenomenal, insane.
It's also interesting to talk about their relationships with their countries as well. We spoke about before that, Argentina and Messi have not always meshed. Excuse me, not always meshed well.
None of them mess with each other.
Messied well. But, there's a reason for that. Like, Argentinian football at a club level is not as, as powerful as English football, for instance. So he left when he was 12. He didn't have that relationship. He didn't understand who his culture was. Yeah. That was clear, and that was one of the criticisms in the previous World Cups. I think coming into this World Cup, he has that relationship with his country, and it's probably never going to be at the level of Maradona, for instance, who really changed Argentinian football in the global perspective. Messi has at least achieved that tier in this World Cup, and that's my belief that he's connected with his people, and that's a huge thing. And that's gonna, as Mike said before, when we talk about legacies, that's key. That's like the thing that we all remember about. We're gonna remember the last couple of days of Cristiano Ronaldo's time at Manchester United, and for all the great things he's done, that's gonna dominate our memory of him as fans of Man U. So it's a different sort of legacy for Messi going forward.
But even looking at, say, the greatest ever player for their country, Messi has only just seemingly matched that for Argentina, where Ronaldo surpassed all previous Portuguese greats, Eusebio, Figo, a long time ago. It feels like a long, long time ago that he was, everyone in Portugal was like, he is our greatest ever footballer now. There is no one better than him. There's no one been ever anywhere near Ronaldo. Where Messi was still a little bit behind Maradona's shadow. Now potentially only winning the World Cup and bringing the entire country to that is that he can match Maradona.
It's also, Ali, I think, and Kevin, you referred to it, where I think Messi's almost accepted the need for him to play a different role. And again, I kind of go back to that example where after the Saudi Arabia game, there was just disarray, in the streets in Argentina, there was just panic. And for Messi to come out and say, we've got to stick together. We've got to believe in this group, and we're gonna make it through this, right? There's a excellent write up about how Messi coming out and saying that, and then over the next 90 minutes, Poland and Mexico drawing almost gave hope back to the people, and Messi then took that to another level by scoring the opening goal. If we take that moment and the role Messi played there, and we compare it to what Ronaldo did a week before the Portuguese campaign started with that infamous interview that a lot of United fans are going to remember, you really have to question, was it necessary for Ronaldo to, if we're really talking about the word that Mike used, legacy, was it really necessary for him to do that a week out from the World Cup, right? He could have done that interview now, right? And I think this is just one of the reasons why the whole banding behind someone for and Ali, you'll probably relate to this really well, but it really felt like that World Cup, that the Cricket World Cup that India won in India, where it felt like the whole team were playing for Sachin Tendulkar. It kind of felt like that, right? It felt like that for Argentina. I don't think it's ever going to feel like that for Ronaldo, because he's not that type of guy. And again, I kind of go back to what we were talking about. Maybe with that personality, with that drive, just everything he's had to go through, maybe this is the way it was going to end. For me personally, it's not going to tarnish his legacy, because I think if we're being objective, this is always the way it was going to end for Ronaldo. It's always been about this ultra focus on getting better and recovering and improving and being the best. At some point, that was going to catch up. And I think it has, right? And yeah, the end is going to be ugly, I think. But let's remember that for the majority of the last 15 years, you couldn't separate these two.
Yep. And there's actually a great quote that kind of summarizes, like Ronaldo's mentality, and that's the whole. There's two people on a treadmill. Ronaldo is either going to win or he's going to die on that treadmill, but he's not going to lose.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the kind of his mentality, is that he's going to just keep putting everything in, keep pouring everything in until there's nothing else left. He's not going to slow down and be like, maybe I need to change tack, maybe I need to wear different shoes. Now it's just, there's no going back now.
Hey, look, if this debate is still raging on as to who the GOAT should be, I think they should go the way of Elon Musk and do a Twitter poll, and let them just decide that way. Really, his put his. Anyways, let's not go to Twitter too much, but it is a platform that's being used quite a lot to decide a lot of hot topics. So,
I mean, using the treadmill example, I think Ronaldo, as he's on record, when talking to Piers Morgan, he's actually quite proud of the fact that he is the most followed person on social media. So if we make this a social media shootout, I don't think he is the social media GOAT. There is no doubt about that.
But does he have the blue check mark?
Can he afford it?
Can he afford it?
Probably not.
Not anymore.
Maybe that's why he's going to sign for Al Nassr, so he can afford that blue tick.
I think on that note, and on the Ronaldo and Messi conversation and us talking about our socials, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you to our panel for your thoughts and opinions. If you want to get sports nerdy with us, you can find us on many of Ronaldo's socials. We constantly stalk him and Messi. Or you can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Backpass Pod. We'll be back next week with more sports analysis and banter right here on The Backpass.